The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Hello folks, welcome back to Rutland once again. This is the last video now before the autumn break. So tomorrow you're not going to have any videos to enjoy, so make the most of this one. Luckily for you, this one's got loads of features to it which you can get your teeth right into, including one circular feature which we have seen before in North Lincolnshire. This is Wing. Wing Field. To finish this current run of parishes in Rutland, we have a place called Wing. Yes, Wing, like the things that birds and aeroplanes have. This has absolutely nothing to do with flying though. Wing literally means field, being an old word for them, although it has morphed from the less romantic sounding weng, first found in records in the 12th century. It probably derives from the Old Norse word vengi, which also meant field. And you know what? Wing is not short of a few fields even today. The village is surrounded by them, but aside from being beautiful Rutland countryside, they don't have anything greatly special to tell us. Within Wing Village though, that's a different story. By far and away the best feature you can find here is an ancient turf maze or labyrinth, similar to Julian's Bower at Oakborough in North Lincolnshire. Cut into the turf beside Glaston Road, it's circular and roughly 40 feet in diameter. The experts reckon it's medieval, based on the fact that its design is similar to the pavement maze in Chartres Cathedral in France. Speaking of religious buildings, Wing has a fine church, mostly rebuilt in 1875 when the spire was removed. Some parts of it date from Norman times, including the arcades and the north doorway. Wing has one pub, the King's Arms, which is the only one left here these days. There used to be one called the Cuckoo Inn, which closed in 2004. It has a legendary folktale to tell us, connected with a village we covered last year in Nottinghamshire. East of it all is Wing Water Treatment Works, a vital piece of infrastructure connected to Rutland Water. Let's go and see it all. So here we have Wing according to the 1900 OS map. It hasn't greatly altered since this was produced, and it still retains its general shape and layout. The centre of the village can be defined by Top Street, which runs from east to west between Wing Old Hall and Wing New Hall, both associated with a rich family from Manchester. North of Top Street, forming an arc-like shape around the edge of the village, is Bottom Street, and the two are linked by way of Middle Street and Reeves Lane. This gives Wing a clustered feel to it. It's certainly not linear. To the south, as you can see, are plenty of fields. That's still the case today because Wing has seen very little in the way of any modern development. A few things have disappeared from those fields though, as we'll learn. There can only really be one place to start in Wing, Glaston Road, seeing as it features the village's most well-known thing, the ancient maze. However, Glaston Road does have a few other bits of note. This field, for example, is no longer just a field, and to the south of the maze is another bit of Wing history we must also cover. Our start point is Mill Close, once the site of one of Wing's ancient post mills. There used to be another post mill on the opposite side of Glaston Road too. It stood in Mill Field. Mills have certainly been an abundant feature of Wing down the years. The first known mill was recorded here in the 12th century, and a post mill was noted in the 1773 Enclosure Award. A map dating from 1806 shows the two mills located on opposite sides of Glaston Road. There are now no remains of either. The mill on the western side had gone by 1884, whilst the one that stood where Mill Close now is was dismantled by 1904. In the 18th and early 19th century, Wing's miller was a baker named John Peach. Later it was Charles Presgrave, who also owned Wing's Bakehouse, previously owned by the Peach family. Heading north along Glaston Road, next we come to the most incredible feature this village has, the ancient and unmissable Wing Maze. This circular medieval turf maze is about 46 feet or 14 metres in diameter and is more accurately described as a unicursal labyrinth. It consists of a grass path which winds backwards and forwards around the circle before ending up at the centre. Now, the history of Wing Maze is not fully known, but those who know their stuff about these things have postulated some theories. The most likely is that it was possibly used for some sort of spiritual pilgrimage or penance by a group of monks, with its design comparable to that of similar 12th and 13th century mazes. For sure, in the 19th century, it was used for village games and feasts. Nobody knows for sure what its purpose really was. Its layout and form is almost exactly the same as the labyrinth found at Chartres Cathedral in France. You might recall, we also saw a similar maze at Oakham in North Lincolnshire, Julian's Bower. The mazes at Oakham and Wing are 2 of just 8 in total of these curious things which can be found across the country. These are like rare collector's items. The maze sits on the edge of Wing's recreation ground, which now occupies that field we saw on the map. It's nice enough as open spaces go, but there's more of interest up the road. Indeed there is. We're heading for a pair of houses now which have got a connection with a Scandinavian country, namely Sweden. And it's those houses behind that tree there. Now we need to have a look at Top Street and Moorcote Road, which form one continuous thoroughfare along the southern edge of Wing's developed area. Along here are most of the main landmarks, such as the church and the old hall. Note too the school, which is still standing, but it's not used for educational purposes now. Interestingly, this map does not show either of the 2 pubs Top Street has. One of them is no longer a pub, but the other most definitely still is. Where Glaston Road meets Moorcote Road, you'll find these lovely buildings. These are known as the Swedish houses, and they date from just after World War II. Between September 1945 and March 1946, Sweden exported 5,000 Baltic pine prefabricated timber houses to England in order to help with the housing shortage here. These are 2 of those 5,000. They all had a life expectancy of about 60 years. On arrival as flat packs, they were allocated in small numbers to rural areas in support of farm workers. Rutland saw plenty of these. Single pairs were erected in Barrowden, Liddington, Ridlington and Wing. Now, only the ones in Barrowden and Wing are still standing. Moorcote Road becomes Top Street, and after passing some lovely 17th century houses, we arrive at the old school, which these days is the village hall. A former Church of England national school, this was built in 1851, designed to accommodate 80 children. It cost £400 to build. It closed in 1977 and became the village hall. It's sometimes known these days as the Wing Community Centre instead. Next to the old school is the Church of St Peter and St Paul, which is normally open to visitors. Now, Wing has no freestanding war memorial, but this church caters for that. The clock on the tower was added in memory of those who lost their lives in World War I. It was installed by Smith & Sons of Derby at a cost of £130 in 1920. Wing has had a church since the 12th century at the very least. The original Norman church was built without aisles, but some were later added. The chancel here was restored in 1875, and the south aisle was likewise in 1885 when the north porch was added and a former south porch and gallery were removed. An original Norman doorway remains in the north porch, and the chancel arch is 13th century. The tower, with a spire, was built between 1380 and 1400. Note though, there's no spire anymore. It was taken down in 1840, having become unsafe due to some belfry alterations. The old rectory on the western side of the church is a notable building. This was built just after 1600 and its first occupant was the Reverend Professor Francis Mears, rector of Wing from 1602 to 1647. His son, also Francis Mears, was headmaster of Uppingham School from 1641 to 1666, as well as being the Archdeacon of Leicester. The rectory today has been renamed Churchfield after it was substantially rebuilt in 1841. It's now far smaller than the original house was. Next we come to this house between the church and the old hall. This is number 3 Top Street, and it used to be a pub which closed in 2004. The first pub that stood on this site was the Red Lion from about 1815. From 1846 it was known as the Knowles Arms, and in 1875 it became the Cuckoo Inn. Now a mighty fine private house, this looks a lot better than it does on some old Google Maps imagery. After closure, it was left to rack and ruin for a long time. The name of the inn was by far the most intriguing thing about this old building. It was called the Cuckoo Inn because supposedly it alluded to a local legend. The story goes that the people of Wing once tried to keep the season of spring in the village forever by erecting a fence around a cuckoo to stop it from leaving. Of course, this didn't work because cuckoos can fly, so naturally it flew over the fence, leaving the residents a bit embarrassed. As a result of this tale, people from the village were, and sometimes still can be, known as Wing Fools. This is actually a widespread story, and we have heard it before. The best known version of it is the one that appears among the adventures of the wise men of Oakham, which we covered last year on our journey through Rushcliffe. On the corner of Middle Street are a collection of buildings related to Wing Old Hall. These include Top Lodge, which was a butler's house from the time when the Worrell family occupied the hall. Another is Garden Cottage, which together with its water pump and barn is Grade 2 listed. It bears the letters GP, almost certainly the initials of George Pepper. Pepper was a well-known name in Wing. Some 60 members of the Pepper family lived in the village until at least 1790. In 2016, Garden Cottage suffered a major fire which broke out in its chimney and rapidly spread to its thatched roof. It took some 80 firefighters to dampen the blaze, and most of the original fabric of the house was destroyed. Over the next 2 years, it was restored to an award-winning standard. So, as mentioned, the Worrell family were once residents of Wing Old Hall. Grade 2 listed, only the rear of this magnificent building can be seen from the road. It was built by George Wyatt Worrell in the late 1880s on the site of a former nursery acquired from the Shield family of Preston, who also held lots of property in Wing. Several properties which formerly fronted Top Street, including the old post office, were demolished when the old hall was built. Mind you, the Worrell family were wealthy enough to do such a thing. They came from Whalley Range in Manchester after making an absolute fortune developing a technique for dyeing velvet at a dye works in Salford. George Wyatt Worrell was one of 8 children who inherited the fortune. His brother, Edward, built Wing New Hall in the 1890s. We'll see that in a bit. Wing only has one pub these days, the Grade 2 listed King's Arms in King's Arms Yard. It was originally a row of 3 buildings. The middle part, which dates from 1694, bears some initials on its outer wall, RSA. The R stands for Ruddles because until 1978, this was one of their 37 tied houses. Nobody's sure what the SA means though. Looking up King's Arms Yard from Top Street, the last building on the left was the village bakery until the 1950s. As we know already, that was owned by members of the Presgrave family, Wing Millers, until the end of the 19th century. They continued as bakers and landlords of the King's Arms until the 1940s. This little alley next on the left along Top Street is a public footpath which runs almost to Wing New Hall. It's known as the City or City Yard. It's thought that the name City Yard comes from the numerous carriages of well-to-do people from nearby cities who came here to consult Amelia Woodcock, the wise woman of Wing. Amelia was a 19th century herbalist who committed suicide after being wrongly accused of being a witch. Her cottage, which has now been demolished, was part of a line of cottages which stood behind City Yard House. Yeah, no witches on City Yard these days, but if you follow it, you will come to something that is very helpful, I suppose. There's a shop down here, which is part of Wing Hall, and I imagine you can get a decent cup of tea, a decent brew in that. Let's check it out. Now, it's possible, using the footpath that runs through City Yard, to take a shortcut through Wing Hall to get to a street called Wing Hill. Let's do that next. Considering this map was produced in 1900, Wing Hall would have been in its infancy here. It still dominates the southwestern portion of the village. As we learned earlier, Wing Hall, or Wing New Hall if you like, was built by Edward Worrell, the brother of George, who lived at the Old Hall. A Victorian country house built between 1885 and 1891, Wing Hall these days is more than just a residence. Today it has a caravan and camping site, as well as a fishing lake, a cafe and a shop. These are all set out in the 100 acres of garden and fields surrounding the house. Wing Hall makes for a near-perfect camping spot, and it's especially popular for those that enjoy Rutland Water's many attractions. It's only 3 miles away after all. Wing Hall is a fundamentally basic tent-focused campsite. It tends to get very busy on the summer bank holiday, but generally it has a quiet, leisurely pace. The campsite has 4 fields with around 250 pitches across the whole site. Just 20 of those are for caravans. A large, flattish field on the left as you enter the site is for tents only. As for the hall itself, today it's lived in by Robin Curley, the great-great-granddaughter of Edward Worrell. Now, so far on our journey around Wing, we haven't seen much in the way of any sort of residences, have we? We've seen a couple on the main road there, and obviously Wing Hall, but yeah, there's more than that in Wing. Where are they all? Well, all the houses, generally speaking, are kind of to the north of that main street, and we're just making our way up to the end of Reeves Lane, which joins Bottom Street. If we walk along Bottom Street, you'll see plenty of houses along there. Our last area to explore on foot is the stuff to the north of everything we've seen so far. This will focus primarily on Bottom Street, Wing's most densely populated area. The vast majority of what you see here is still the same now, although this chapel is no longer a religious building. It does give us an interesting tale to tell though. After walking up Wing Hill and Reeves Lane, the road starts to bend onto Bottom Street, which used to be called Far Street at one time, by the way. If you look to your left on the bend, you'll see a footpath that used to lead to Manton Railway Station. This was well used by villagers when the station was operational. Also at the end of Bottom Street is another path which used to be a road. It ran to Station Road and Crownwell Farm in Wing Hollow. Along its route there was a water pump which was used for watering cattle. It's said that the pump never ran dry, even when other pumps in the village failed. From here on in, it's almost all residential as we make our way back to the start. Wing is full of properties that date back to the 17th and 18th centuries. A lot of them are built of stone quarried at both Barnock in Peterborough and Clipsham elsewhere in Rutland. Many are roofed with Collie Western stone slate. One standout property on Bottom Street is Cedar House, built in the 1700s. It now has a late Victorian frontage though. It was once the home of the Shield family, who owned most of the village until the late 1800s, when they sold off their land and properties. From Bottom Street, it's possible to get a great view down into the Chater Valley if you know where to stand. It's little wonder Wing was attractive for lots of wealthy folk. In fact, in its time, Wing has seen a pretty good little list of people live within its boundaries. Here's a few of them in chronological order. In 1556, Thomas Smith, the English Master of Requests, was born here. 9 years later, so too was Francis Mears, who we learned about earlier. He became rector of Wing in 1602. The physicist Sir Charles Vernon Boys, famed for his work on thermodynamics and high-speed photography, was born in Wing in 1855. Most recently, Air Chief Marshal Sir Clive Loader, who was Leicestershire Police and Crime Commissioner between 2012 and 2016, still lives in Wing today. The last landmark on the walk is the chapel, found at the point where Middle Street meets Bottom Street. Remember earlier at the church when we learned that the spire was taken down? Well, legend has it that this chapel was built using the stone from that spire in the 1840s. It apparently caused some controversy at the time, and it sort of makes sense when you think about it because it was part of an Anglican building being reused by the nonconformists. Whatever the case with the building material, the chapel is now closed, but it has found another use. Today it's a holiday cottage and welcomes many visitors to Wing every year. It's getting warm now, people. I could do with a drink, I know that much. Luckily I have one in the car. But as far as drinking water goes here in Rutland, Wing is potentially the place to be, actually. The reason for that is because, as we know, there's a reservoir up the road, a blooming big reservoir, Rutland Water. Before that gets distributed to its consumers, it has to be treated. And from Rutland Water, all that water comes down to Wing first. To finish with, let's have a look at Wing Water Treatment Works. Yes, I know, not the most glamorous of landmarks, but a vital piece of our national water system. Operated by Anglian Water, it has a simple enough job. It extracts water from that big reservoir just up the road and then treats it before sending it out to customers as drinking water. Once water has been through this, it ends up in various places throughout the East Midlands, and quite a lot of it supplies the city of Peterborough. As you can imagine, having the water treatment works in Wing is really good for its locals. Anglian Water is seen in Wing as both a key local employer and an important part of the community. In recent times, proposals by Anglian Water to raise the volume of water extracted were opposed by the RSPB, who feared that the water level changes at Rutland Water would damage wildfowl habitats. In addition to its watery role, the works is also known for a 3.7-acre geological site of special scientific interest adjacent to it, which is important both regionally and nationally. It has the longest known sequence in Britain of deposits from the warm Ipswichian interglacial, which occurred around 120,000 years ago. Scientists have found amazing things at it, including new types of ancient plants. These discoveries have helped us to learn what plants grew during that period of time. There is access to the SSSI from Moorcote Road, but no geology is visible these days as the site has been filled in over time. Okay, so that'll do us for Wing, and with it we're now 1/3 of the way through Rutland. I've been loving this county so far, and we still have 66% of it to cover. I'll be back again in a few weeks when we'll be taking on 2 more close to the Leicestershire border. Once there, we'll be seeing the county's other, lesser known reservoir. See you soon. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.